Oh man, that Type Moon sounds pretty good. I like that logo a lot. Boom, boom. That feels so nostalgic, to be honest. They had that logo since Stay Night visual novel, right? In 2004. It's the same sound effect. And I don't know about the same logo, but it's still the same sound effect. That's really cool. Uh-oh. I don't remember. It's been a while since we played. To the next episode. All I remember is Alice killed some people. Or demons. I don't know. Night 3. Uh-oh. Where do I put my thing in? Oh, what the hell? I guess I'll put the mouse here. Let me tell you how the events of yesterday transpired. On moonless nights, you must never look back. Was it a lesson, or was it a warning? It was so very long ago. At a time, I could not have imagined what my very being would become. One night, it came without warning. I was filled with anxiety so heightened that it made me want to burst into tears, so I fled to my grandfather's workshop. Unlike the grandfather I knew, he smiled and kindly placed his hand upon my head. Yes, the Red Death follows your every step. A little quiet, right? I wonder if I should make it louder too. I think 13 is okay. Should I do 8? Nah, sorry. Rather than consoling me, he sent me home with only those haunting words. That night, I was certain that I sensed a shadow lurking behind me. Something or someone watching me from afar. Then little by little, year by year, it drew closer. Eventually, the presence that once felt like a spot. My horizon grew so close that I could feel his breath down the base of my neck. Feels like the music's so low. Let me boost it up. Do this. I think that's good. What? Of course, it was all in my mind. When I turned around, nobody was there. But that night marked the beginning. In hindsight, I later understood that the indescribable anxiety I felt was the dread of certain death. Am I deaf?
The cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed.
How much time has passed since that night? And lingered deep in the recesses of my mind where childhood memories are kept. A faded storybook-esque memory. On dark nights, I still hear the faint echo of my grandfather's word. But no matter how strong the wind may howl, or how entrancing the song of the girl next to me, I can never bury his ominous words completely. Oh, it's Alice. Oh, we just heard her! I recently played Shadow Garden, the mobile game, and they have an event called Apocrypha War. Her VA played Alexia. Oh shit. But now she's Alice. The Kana Hanazawa, right, her VA. The girl beside me said. Alice's inflectionless voice spoke volumes of her role as the bystander. That night, there was only me and her. It was a night I would mark as the birth of who I am today. For what should have been quite the memorable night, it sure wasn't a promising start. Dense clouds blocked the starlight above like a black umbrella. A strong wind tore through the sky, carrying the heavy clouds with it. The hands on the clock in the middle of the park pointed skyward, as if reaching for the moon. I think it's really loud. Maybe I'll put it back. Nice code. Unfortunately for them, tonight was no moon to point at. The winter air grew fiercer as the night wore on. Inhaling, it felt as though it would freeze me from the inside. Air chilled me to the bone, threatening to pass up my spine directly to my brain. to prevent my mind from being paralyzed, and to prevent my fingertips from becoming stone. I sparked a fire using my eternal rhythm and emotion.
触覚を譲るわ。幸運ね。あの位置なら刻んでおいたウィスプが止まる。
I responded to Alice with a nod. And then, for just a moment, I saw the ground. My legs quivered ever so faintly. I told myself they were shaking from the cold, but I wasn't so sure. In reality, they may have not been numbed by the cold, but by fear. I breathed a sigh of relief. My humanities must still be intact, and my emotions are still present. Before I could sink into a pool of my own sentimentality, the sensation from the bounded field flowed from Alice into me. A transparent wall covered the entire park. An unrecognizable carpet rooted deep under the earth. Oh, nose itchy. Alice Kwanji, chants of the Mother Goose fairy tales permitted the night. The sensation became one with my body. I felt goosebumps on my quivering right arm. Someone had trespassed. The goosebumps crept up my right arm like ants, and slowly but surely made inroads from my heart. Holding back the desire to drive them out, I waited for them to reach a certain definitive position. A moonless night, the park quaint. Street lights were not enough to lift the darkness. The ants came to a stop, far, far from my right arm. They had reached my very heart. Even without the aid of my sense of sight, I could see the intruder lurking in the darkness. To starboard in the bushes about 30 steps back on all fours, it was beckoning with its right hand. The enemy movement and perception of it were in lockstep. I spun around. The enemy arm stretched out like a spear. The lethal weapon aimed at the back of my head, brushed my hair at breakneck speed. With the omniscient awareness granted by Alice Ward, I managed to avoid it by the skin of my teeth. My hair fanned through the air from the violence of the attack. The strike grazed my cheek, and I felt a small, sharp pain. It felt like the kiss of death. I switched the flow of my body blood to a different circle. The blood running through my veins at a few feet per second transmuted into an imaginary element. My body became a single circuit, and my heart transformed into a completely different engine. Within me stirred an unknowable motion of immeasurable heat. Something mystic, yet untapped by humankind, that made me who I am. It was the fire of life behind all miracles and fables. What we mages called magical energy. I turned around, set the enemy in my sights, and held up one hand. My arm was the agent of my will. The lack of experience meant my magecraft would only be possible with the use of vocalization gestures. Magical formulae were engraved all over the park. All I had to do was ignite them. I needed to direct the flow of magical energy within my body into each formula. Typically, a mage acts as a conduit. Whether wired or wireless, the mage simply pours magical energy into the formula, releasing this energy in the form of a projectile, stream, or any number of other methods would usually suffice, but in my case, it was the feeling of my limbs whipping out. Burned? I fought speed with speed. She used fire. The enemy arm extended 10 feet forward, became engulfed in flames. It was nighttime at the park, the scene reminiscent of a campfire, but one in which the center of the flames contained a humanoid figure wiggling into a shadow park like a shadow puppet. The flame subsided just as unnaturally as it had ignited. No crackling, no burning smell.
結界返すわ。死体を確認するから。
After telling this to Alice, I headed toward the motionless figure. I killed it. I killed it. I killed it. Regardless of who my opponent was, I just took someone's life. My throat parched. I swallowed the truth that without this sense of reality, I would have been helpless. So hard and bitter, impossible to swallow, but I tried to anyway. I was unnervingly calm. My heart pounded and my breath felt heavy, but my mind was nonetheless calm. By the time I realized it, the charred remains were already in front of me. Bracing for a counterattack, I carefully examined the corpse. Everything seemed fine. This body lying slumped to the ground was nothing but ash. But something wasn't right. To begin with, the remains didn't smell organic. Not willing to believe my hunch, I took a closer look at the corpse's face. All that greeted me was the featureless white face of a mannequin. Screaming, I kicked the mannequin. The corpse crumbled to ash and disappeared with the wind. No, this was no corpse. This was just a puppet, and for all our effort to lure the master out, we had once again been tricked by a familiar. My debut, my first test out in the open, would be postponed for another day.
いつになったら一人前にって。あれ?
At that moment, I suddenly noticed something familiar in the corner of my eye. Something seemed strange about the slide at the other end of the park. It appeared as though its shadow were larger than it should be. Was I still drunk on the high of the battle? It took me a second to realize what it was. Calling out was a mistake. Startled by my voice, the figure, wearing a familiar high school uniform, took a step back and then it broke into a sprint, like someone running for their life. Or should I say, he was doing exactly that. In a rush, I shouted to my partner, but she hadn't even noticed the third-party presence in the first place. Though it wasn't as if I could move by myself. Embarrassingly, the fight had taken more out of me than I would have liked. There was no time for nice teas. What the hell? For us, being seen here was a matter of life or death. Life and death. Shaking off the numbness of my legs, I made for the park exit. I had to admire his escape. The witness, party to entire night proceedings, had disappeared into the darkness of the residential district without a trace. Complaining to myself when I bring back the figure in uniform. Bitter at my own incompetence, I gave up the chase. Though temporary, the park had become Alice Woods. For anyone within a few feet of the park, other park goers' identifiable features and voices became murky, like the stuff of fairy tales. Tonight proceeding may have had a witness, but if our identity were still hidden, then this was still a chance. I returned to the park. The uniform was, without a doubt, from my high school. That was clue enough. If he was a schoolmate of mine, I had plenty of methods to flush him out. Amidst my grumbling, I set my priorities straight. Before some strange rumors spread, I needed to seal the witness' mouth shut. That was the highest priority, quickly and without mercy. Looking up, I saw Alice, previously distant figure. Though she was in as much trouble as I was with her existence, as a mage also exposed, she had but one thing to say. Her statue-like figure, staring into the darkness, seemed more expressionless than calm. I was pissed off. Her inscrutable voice resembled the moonless night so much it made me angry. What? That was the end of chapter 3. That was quick. Alright. Chapter seems short. How was that a chapter? Okay. Next episode. I wonder how they're gonna do the movie. They're probably gonna do it all in one sequence, right? Blue in her name? Aoko. Ao? There really isn't any other way of saying this. I'm a magician. Kinda like those witches in fairy tales who live alone in the woods and perform miracles with the wave of a finger. While the popular depiction of it differs from reality, it's closer to the truth than you know. Though, just so we're clear, no, I don't fly through the sky on a broom. I cannot transform to animals or speak with small birds. Modern mages are nothing so fanciful. Our existence sounds unbelievable, but we're quite grounded. Though it may seem like we can do anything, we actually majorly constrained. And while I still have a lot to learn about it, this is my real job. Sounds a lot more romantic than being a high school student, right? Naturally, this is a secret I don't just share with anyone. A mage must do everything in their power to conceal their work. This is the first and most important of the Association 10 laws. Not that I'm tempted to let the cat out of the bag in the least. My secret identity as an honor student is intact, and absolutely no good would come of me revealing my true nature. If anything, it'll only lead to more headaches. That's why I do everything in my power to keep it a secret. Of course, if I accomplish anything as a magician by now, then maybe I see it differently. I fantasize about revealing my secret life's work to a single special person when I finally make myself, something of myself. Yeah, it'd be pretty stellar to just confess one day, by the way, I'm a magician. The idea alone is enough to keep me from spoiling the big reveal, regardless of the association's rule. My grandfather patted me on the head when I shared these thoughts with him. I don't know if it was praise or what, but I remember that his touch was gentle. I first learned that I would be succeeding my grandfather on the day I graduated middle school. When I returned home, there he was. Your elder sister left on a journey. From this day forth, you are the heir to the Aozaki. Aozaki. I think it's Ao. Ao is blue, so Aozaki. Her name is Aoko. Blue. Wait a minute. He said it in such a matter-of-fact way. I knew that the Aozaki family passed down this old tradition of magecraft, but to be honest, I never imagined I would be the one to wield it. Magecraft is supposed to be passed down to a single child. It was my sister Ro to take the mantle, and I had no interest in dedicating myself to so many rules and routines. I planned to live a normal life. I had hopes and dreams for the future. Hold on, pause. I wonder how much of the story changed. I know Witch on the Holy Night is supposed to be Nasu's first work that he did in high school, and he rewrote it, right? When he made this visual novel. I wonder how much of the Fate Stay Night, when he rewrote it, influence that he put in it. Because he had a lot more thought when he made his quote-unquote Nasu-verse. Because usually, right, didn't they explain Fate Stay Night as well? Like, if they have more than one kid, they usually give the other kid away for adoption. Like what they did with Sakura. But she didn't get adopted. They kept her. I felt bad for my sister, but I was determined to live my life my way. And while I managed to do just that for the time, I was blindsided by a vicious counterpunch. Since then, I've been thrust headlong into a world I had only observed from afar. It was a hell of a way to start high school, but I suppose it wasn't all that bad, all things considered. A lot has happened since then. I was so dazed by this newfound life that a year of school motored right by. I was a second year before I knew it. Thankfully, nothing drastic had happened. The 6 months of my roommate and I totally tried to kill each other, notwithstanding. As it happens, I got a natural talent at this magic stuff, so I yet to have any hang-ups there either. I'm only human, so I had my fair share of headaches for sure, but never once did I worry about my future. I thought my life would be smooth sailing all the way. If only everything had gone to plan last night.
どう？
Alice Kwanji asked Aoko Aozaki the second she entered the house. Her dark eyes seceded where her voice failed to communicate the gravity of the situation. Aoko took off the unflattering coat, hung it on the hanger, and sat down on the sofa. Alice sat across from her, with a table separating them.
そっちは？
よくないわね。偵察に行けるのは7個ぐらい。ここのところ使ってばかりで、作り置きをする余裕もなかったし。
Alice's gaze drifted from Aoko to the box on the table.
あの夜、町を監視していた奴はいないの？町の偵察は完璧なんでしょ？そいつら。
それは昼間の話よ。夜間飛行は危険が多いわ。
Meaning they were of the least use when needed the most, Aoko sighed.
そういうあなたは？朝は随分と強気だったけど。
ああ、こっちは予定通りよ。明日までには絞り込めると思う。今朝、飛び丸にうちの生徒の自宅と行動時間を調べさせたから。あの時間に公園をうろつくやつはめったにいないし、簡単に割り出せる。
そう簡単に行くの？
行くわよ。伊達に生徒会に勤めてないわ。その程度のデータは揃えてある。月1のバイト先はおろか、親しい友人宅との移動時間、その優先順位まで調べ上げてるんだから。人には見せたくなかったリストだけど、そんな余裕ないでしょ？だから、そういうのが向いてる副会長にやらせたの。
Incidentally, the creation of the secret file started the moment Aoko became student council president. The mere rumor of the existence was enough to strike fear into the entire student body.
そう。徹底しているわね。
Alice was only mildly surprised. It had been almost 2 years since they first started living together. She knew as well as anyone that when Aoko put her mind to something, she saw it through to the end.
ま、私もあれがこんな風に役立つとは思ってもみなかったけど。ほんと、備えあれば憂いなしとはこのことね。
But what happened last night was far beyond a mere exception to the rule. This predicament should have not been possible.
それより、原因は分かったの？結界の結びに不手際があったなんてのは聞かないわよ。
Aoko glared at her. The ward was Alice's responsibility. It was to blame for last night's trouble. Alice had to own up to her own fair share. Alice and Aoko may have been roommates and partners, but it was a relationship of convenience. While lineage had brought them together, they were more like enemies than allies. Ultimately, they were not a match. Where there was a blunder, it was punished. Where there was an opening, it would be attacked. If there was even an opportunity, the two of them would kill each other in the event of such a moment. Alice locked eyes with Aoko. Aoko's fierce gaze could make a grown man cower in fear, but Alice did not bat an eyelash.
仮の話だけど、あの結界に落ち度があったのなら、今まで何度もこういう状況になっていたでしょうね。
I suppose you're right, Aoko agreed, as the question reaffirmed her trust in Alice.
結界のあり方は完璧だったのね。
絶対とまでは断言はできないけど。
Alice answered as flatly as ever. It bounded feels like a sanctuary sealed away from the real world. Steps are taken whereby a certain area is cut off from the outside world. There are various kinds of bounded fields. There are physical ones that close off an area behind a wall, and less tangible ones that use mirrors, mists, or trees to conceal that which occurs within. However, with closing off an area to the outside world, you cannot avoid communicating the abnormality existence. In other words, the area may be closed off to the outside world, but it is impossible to hide the fact that it's closed off. In time, someone will take interest in the sealed off area even if they cannot see what is going on inside. Some might say this is putting the cart before the horse. The ideal field would be one that was both undetectable and impervious to interference from the outside. That was exactly the kind Alice had generated in the park of the night before.
その場所に用があっても、今はないように思わせれば、誰もそこには立ち入らない。隠したい場所の周りに一時的な意識の改ざんを促す結界を張る。手間はかかるんだけど、1時間程度の人よけには信頼性は高い結界よね。アリスの鏡を使った一級品だし、途中で破れることもない。事実、入ってきたのはあの人形だけだとはっきり感じられた。これで完璧じゃなかったら何が完璧なのよ。
私もわからない。森作りに落ち度はなかったわ。森は数日かけて栽培したものだし、今まで通り信頼できる結界よ。けど例外があったのなら、どこかで見落としがあったのね。
The Alice words conceded the possibility. Her eyes expressed her confidence that she had overlooked nothing.
参った。こうなると、一番いいのは、あいつが人形使いだってパターンね。それならかろうじて納得できる。相手が魔術師なら、結界の侵入ぐらいできるでしょうし。問題は、侵入した時の違和感をどうやって消したかってことだけど。
The thought of being targeted by this individual was pretty terrifying. They were able to penetrate Alice's field. It could only mean that their skill in magecraft was superior to Alice. Oh, Alice, in her current state, would be completely helpless against such a foe.
その線はないわ。彼は部外者よ。ムクドリはともかく、ロビンが後をたどれなかったもの。魔力の気配は全くなし。誰かの魔術で操られている犠牲者というのもないわね。
Akko was quickly running out of straw to grasp at. That means she was out of questions to ask. All she could do was call it bad luck and leave it at that.
魔術師の秘密を見られて、おまけに目撃者を逃がしたか。普通の高校生の悩みじゃないな。
The sofa groaned as she leaned back. Her gaze went up to the brown ceiling with a sigh. It wasn't much of a view. She was becoming increasingly depressed.
青子、覚悟を決めておいて。
Her roommate voice seemed indifferent, but Akko just kept staring up at the wooden ceiling.
それとも、あなたにできないのなら、私が言ってあげてもいいけど。
The cool-mannered girl's statement carried an equally icy implication. Akko took the words in slowly with as much sincerity as she could muster. It was like trying to swallow molten lead.
そうだ。覚悟なんて、もう決めたでしょ。
The thought sounded hollow, even as it popped into her head. This was clearly different from last time. While the aim was indeed the same, the circumstances surrounding her target was clearly different. She may have been determined before, but that was as a mage. If enemies emerged, she would kill them. If she was challenged, she would step up to the fight. It was a fight between two mages. Her opponent was in the wrong. Even this could only end in death for one of them. It was an outcome both parties could accept. Kill or be killed. Morality had no weight on the scale. But this time was different. Her opponent was neither enemy nor mage. Even if she was prepared to kill them, this person was likely not ready to die. That's why morality did factor into it now. Was she truly up to the task of murdering an innocent person? Could she follow the fact that this was a common occurrence for a mage? She snorted sardonically. Okay. Being a mage did not mean that Aoko was some kind of monk who could cut ties with the real world on a whim. There was one thing Aoko hated. It was doing things without conviction or understanding of exactly why she was doing them. When she acted, she preferred to act decisively.
やるしかないだろうね。
As she said it, she got up from the sofa, having had her fill of the ceiling for one day. Aoko had returned to the alcove as always, and Alice was done probing her.
じゃあ、これ。
As if to reward her, Alice produced a small bottle. It fit neatly into the palm of her hand. The bottle looked completely out of place in her slender fingers. The glass was cloudy and appeared empty. Some shreds of paper remained on the front, where there was once a label.
何よそれ。
Aiko stared at the bottle suspiciously.
収納の小瓶。ちょうど一つ余ってたから、あげるわ。
はい。
名前は忘れたけど、中国の小説に出てきたのと同じよ。
Aiko was miraculously able to parse what Alice meant.
それってレンゲ堂の兄弟の話？じゃああの赤いひょうたんと同じなわけ？言いたくないけど、そこら辺の風邪薬のラベルを無理やり剥がして小瓶に見せかけてるそれが？
Alice looked at the bottle and acknowledged how ordinary it looked. She also understood that she would not be the one using it as she set it on the table.
赤いひょうたんじゃなくて、陽子玉の上瓶の方。
そういう問題じゃない。私は魔術師としての雰囲気を論じてるんだ。
些細なことを気にするのね。せいろがんの瓶じゃないだけいいと思うけど。
She made a good point.
蓋を開けて相手の名前を尋ねればいい。
Hey, it is. Oh, dude! Takuichi drew the reflection! That's pretty fucking good. That's really good detail. I like that a lot.
ただし、相手に抵抗する意志が残っている場合、小瓶は割れるから気をつけて。
Aiko raised her eyebrows.
ちょっと待った。抵抗する意志があるとダメって、眠っている時にやれってこと？
それは試したことがなかったわ。眠っているのに返事をする人っているの？
たまにいるけど。まあ確かに珍しいわね、そういう人。
In that case, one would have to weaken them until they were about to pass out.
ああ、そうそう。薬や魔術がかかっていると、その重さでも割れるから気をつけて。
使えない。それってほとんど役立たずってことじゃない。
それは青子次第ね。
Alice turned away as she replied. I said the topics no longer mattered to her.
はあ、アリスがこういう小道具好きなのは知ってたけどね。これも趣味なわけ？
Aiko asked, hoping Alice would deny it.
多分。それでどうするの？持っていくのか行かないのか。
Without answering, Aiko dithered a bit before taking the bottle and put it in her pocket. She figured she might as be able to find some use for it. Two hours had passed and the clock struck 9. The conversation had moved from the drawing room to the sunroom and had manifested into the kind of scene one would not expect in such a mansion. Hot pot!
まあ本当はね、飛び丸に任せる気はなかったんだけど。
A hot otherworld pot sat on the table. Aiko spat out complaints to no one in particular as she plucked food from it with her chopsticks. Hey, nice hot pot. Tonight they were eating a traditional Japanese meal that looked out of place in this mansion. When they came to this kind of Japanese hot pot, where all one had to do was buy and boil ingredients, it was usually Aiko's responsibility. Alice sat across from Alko as she silently poked at the pot with a fork. Damn, dude, Alice used a fork! Oh, shit! Hey, man, respect. Alright.
山城のやつが来るなり、しずきくんはまだ部活に入っていないから面倒見てあげてくれないかななんて言ってくるもんだからさ。
Hey!
全校生徒の行動範囲なんて見直す気力なくなっちゃったのよ。
Isn't Alice Japanese? Her last name's like Kwanji or some shit like that. What the heck? She using a fork? The egg she had plucked was still as silky as the baby bottom, so she returned it to the pot. The egg she plucked? Silky? So it's not fully cooked. You know, a half-cooked egg, 50-50. That shit is mad good. I like the yolk when it's like a little yolky, not cooked all the way. I don't mind if the white stuff's not that cooked all the way too. As long as like kind of cooked, then it's alright for me. She settled for the shirataki noodles instead. No. Oh, the reflection!
あのバカがバイトで忙しいの知ってるわよ。
What the hell? She stole it. Is this why you gotta use chopsticks, Alice?
だからできるだけ春先までのんびりしてて、あんなのでも親身になってくれそうな部の部長に当たってみたのに。
She gonna take it again?
ありがとうの一つもないってのはちょっと尺に触るわよね。ねえ、聞いてるアリス。
As her mouth was full, she simply nodded in response. Her expression stated that she had no interest nor opinion on the matter, but she at least appeared to be listening. Satisfied, Alko nibbled on some hand-pan fish cake.
それに
Naruto!
私、いい人なんて言われるやつは信用できないのよ。あろうことか、飛び丸までそんなこと口走る始末だし。あれはいい人なんじゃなくて、ただぼんやりしてるだけなんだっての。だいたいあそこまで言われて怒りもしないなんてどうかしてるわ。
Her thought went to what had happened in the student council room earlier that day. She remembered how non-responsive Sojiro had been to her words. His unconcerned face alone was enough for her to swallow the rest of her handpin without chewing it. Oh, nice
何が
chopsticks.
分かってるんだなよ。
His words... hold on. Damn, dude, that's the egg. That egg looked pretty good. I wanted the rest of that. Her words were a lot like those that ended her childhood.
青子ちゃんは分かっているんだね。それでも自分であり続けられるということはとても強いことなんだよ。
Perhaps it was meant as a compliment, but she took it as a patronizing way to pity her. Because the person who said it had acted like she was looking at her wounded animal.
あんな変態の言ってたことなんて今さらどうでもいいけどさ。
That episode might have made her the most confused she had ever been in her life. Yet, what shocked young Alko the most was to look of pity on the face of the person she admired the most.
喧嘩。
The abrupt comment stopped her in her tracks.
ごめん、聞いてなかった。喧嘩ってあの喧嘩？
Alice nodded.
あなたの感想だけじゃ状況はよくつかめないけど。つまり、青子はその人に喧嘩を売りたかったのね。
Alice bit into the very last handpin. Oh, she got a fork! Look at her go! Can you see it? Oh, I'm covering her a little bit. Oh, man. I guess I can do this. There you go. Look at her fork! It's so glossy. Or I don't even know what you call it. I like her fork. Alice is classy. I kind of like this character. She's a good character. Alko's pretty good too.
なんでそうなるのよ。私はあんなのと1秒だって関わりたくないだけだってば。だいたいそれどころじゃないし、興味とか全くないし、会話もこれ以上ないってぐらい簡潔に切り上げたし。
Anything about him?
なら、どうして今そんな話をするの？
え？それはその
Did she move her chopsticks?
あんたに今日の調査過程を知らせてあげたのよ。それ以外何があるっていうの？
What other reason could Alice be suggesting Alko had for bringing it up? It would be several hours later, in bed, that Alko realized that she had dug her own grave.
いいけど、私は別に。ただ、青子は本当にその人が嫌いなの？
Alice ate her hot pot in silence, as if she was honoring some sort of sacred ritual. What the hell? What the? You saw the way she moved her. What is that? Is that her fork? How is she holding her fork? That little thing just wiggling in front of her. Alice. Alright, whatever. Her face was as indifferent as always, but she was secretly enjoying how flustered Alko was. Alko remained oblivious to this. Normally, she would have noticed immediately, but she was not quite herself at the moment.
本当にって、そりゃそうよ。
This is a really long
気に食
fork.
わないって何度も言ってるじゃ
Okay,
ない。
I get it.
そう。
Oh, it is the fork.
具体的には？
は？具体的にはって、そんなのに理由なんて。
She trailed off, as she finally realized how disagreeable she was being. She could come up with no reason why. Her instincts had told her that she was incompatible with that hick. But why such a strong reaction? More than anything in the world, Alko hated emotions without reason and decisions made with no rationale.
嫌いなものは嫌いなんだから、ちゃんとどっかに理由があるんだと思うけど。
You know, young Alko kind of remind me of Tosaka. Doesn't she remind me? Doesn't she kind of remind me of Tosaka? Young Alko. She changed a lot when she gets older. She's like more happy or whatever. But young Alko, she's always pissed. Kind of like Tosaka. I always remember Tosaka always being fucking pissed too. She became more flustered the more she talked. Unfortunately for her, she could not come up with a coherent reason to hate Sojiro Suzuki. It was not his fault that he had zero common sense. It was the fault of the environment he grew up in. In fact, it was admirable that he was trying so hard to adapt to civilized society. As clueless as he might seem, he was not a complete waste of space. If he seemed a bit slow, it was only because his gentle nature compelled him to think before acting. When one looked at everything objectively, the conclusion was obvious. As much as she was loath to admit it, he really was unassuming do-gooder everyone had him pegged as.
ちょっと本気かっての。人間的に悪いところ、本当にみじんもないのか？あれ？
My bad. There was plenty, so she left it at that for now. The chopsticks she has been using came to a stop. She was getting very annoyed. An irrational hatred burned through her head. Unable to come to terms with her feelings, she desperately tried to analyze Sojiro, but her mind only went in more circles. Alice fixed Alko with a deadpan stare.
呆れた。
A small sigh.
らしくないわね、青子。
Those words were the final blow. Alko felt the floor fall out from under her. She was unable to leave her chair until long after Alice had finished eating and left. Then who's gonna clean up the hot pot? I guess Alko. Who cleaned up the mansion, dude? This mansion's huge. They don't have maids? However, even after getting knocked down, Alko Aozaki was not one to be kept that way. She made short work of clearing up after dinner, and after conceding the first bath of the night to Alice, left the drawing room. Since it was customary to these sort of mansions to turn lights off when leaving an empty room, the only lit area in the house were the drawing room and the two girls' bedrooms. The upstairs were enveloped in darkness. Alko briskly made her way to the deepest part of the east wing along the long corridor, illuminated only by the light of the moon, and arrived at her room.
結論として、 やっぱり騙し討ちは気に食わない。
What? She's talking to herself. Okay. She had been considering this on her way down the corridor, or perhaps ever since she left the drawing room. The moment she entered her room, she drew a proverbial line in the sand.
やるにしても隠れるのはなし。正面から堂々と向かい合って理由を言う。
This was not a concession driven by feelings of sympathy or compassion. For her, this was simply the way things ought to be.
よし、そうと決まれば。
Why she has a lot of guitars? She doesn't seem like the type. At least young Akko doesn't seem like the type. After settling her resolve, she headed to the study next door. Nice study.
木曜棚の当時欄、緑の背表紙と。
Without hesitation, she moved one book from the countless volumes on the shelf. The introductory textbooks transported here from the Aozaki residence were separated into 6 shelves, labeled Monday to Saturday. This is her reading face. Aoko had organized the books by topic, genre, and purpose, and had more or less memorized exactly what was in her personal library. It's a lot of reading, man. Can't thirsty a lot. Referencing any of this material took her no time at all. It was to be expected from keeper of the study, though this keeper fiefdom was nothing more than a small room. Both Aoko and Alice had given up all hope in the cluttered mess of a library and an annex. Nonetheless, on occasion, Aoko would have no option other than to give Alice a heads up and visit it when the study did not meet their needs.
できればそれは避けたいところだけど、と。
Aoko placed the thick green book down and took a seat. The desk she sat at was sturdy, but uninviting. It wasn't the sort of furniture girls her age grew attached to, but she liked its minimalist elegance nonetheless. She flipped lightly through the book's old, worn pages.
アリスみたいな結界は私にはまだ無理だ。人払いはその場所自体に頼らないといけないか。
The mountains, the woods, the school building, empty at night. She was looking for a place that would be, except for the worst of luck, for the people, allowing her to forego the use of magecraft.
茨の壁だの魔力の霧だの、そういう回りくどいのもなんだしな。退路を断つっていうなら、もっとこう見た目にも状況的にも派手な方が効果的だし。
Muttering about how there had to be some basic spell that fit her needs, she continued to flip the pages. It goes without saying that she was looking for a way to deal with the witness from the previous night. Magecraft uses were many, but not all-encompassing. Fundamentally, Magecraft was good for making things or phenomena that existed already, while more or less bypassing the time and resources conventional means would require. It was, however, unable to manifest phenomena that were impossible in this world. It was essentially an equivalent exchange that used a variety of shortcuts. A phenomenon made possible by human hands, actualized by individual power. That was generally what Magecraft was. To give it a simple example, if Aoko was so inclined, she could make an entire lake appear at the mansion. However, it had to be something that existed within this world. Nothing, not even the smallest matter, could escape the unbreakable law. Even if Aoko were to release a level of heat on par with a 515 fighter jet afterburner, that event will only be possible in the circuit named Aoko Aozaki, acted as a temporary input variable in the magical formula. The derived equivalence was simply a value that already occurred in reality. If the variable in the equation did not exist elsewhere in reality, the spell would not be valid. The imaginary element known as magical energy was like a line that could only slip his fantasy through the network of order at the moment of ignition, giving form to the non-existent. Illusions invading reality was something the universe did not allow.
とは言ってもエーテルは基本何にでもできるんで大元が嘘なんだっけ
I like her I like her face. It's a good face.
魔力だけで構成されたものは幻想扱いされて急速に消えていくとか典型的な結界茨の壁とかはもともと茨を生やしておいて魔力で一気に成長強化してるものだし魔力っていうのは結局使い勝手のいいガソリン兼自称に火をつける火花ってわけで
I hope the anime keep these expressions, right? I know Unfoldable is trying to go for that. I don't even know what they're trying to go for. It's like realistic but anime look, right? Not like Chainsaw Man, like Mappa. But they try to go for like full realism, kind of, but it's weird. Like a Hollywood movie camera angle kind of shit. But it doesn't really work out. At least season 1 Chainsaw Man. But Unfoldable goes for this, I don't know, flashy, high quality CG shit. Right? That's really colorful. They don't really, I guess they kind of do. They do a couple of facial expression in Demon Slayer. I hope they keep that same energy, right? With the facial expressions. And keep the facial expression they had from the Mahoyo visual novel and translate that to the movie. That'd be good. Oh. That's funny. Excuse me. I like that face.
架空要素云々より基本的な回路の接続と魔力を加工して弾くことぐらいしかできないのよね私
Laughing to herself, she looked for a bounded field or something similar more suited to her current ability. The identity of the witness was still unknown, but if they were a classmate of Anko, she had any number of pretexts by which to lure them out. The problem was after that.
そうなると問題は命中率よね一撃で決めないと逃げられちゃうだろうし
To be honest, she wasn't confident she could handle this smoothly without Alice's support. But Anko saw no reason to ask for help, given that the target in question was a regular bystander. Fledgling as she was, she still had her pride as a mage. She continued to turn to the pages rhythmically. You think Tosaka would have the guts to kill someone? Right. That's normal. Like a regular human being. I don't know. She was ready to make peace with whoever died by Lancer, right? In Fate Stay Night, the first fight, Archer versus Lancer, and Lancer caught a normal bystander, started a fight, so he went out and killed him. And Tosaka didn't seem panicky. Well, she was a little panicky, but she didn't seem too worried that the person died. She was like, I'm sorry, you had to die. But then the moment she realized it was Shido, that's when she was like, oh, fuck. No. That's when she's like, all right, let me do everything I can to save your life. And she used her most precious family jewel to save Shido's life. Damn, man. Maybe UBW should be the true route. Without Tosaka, there's no Shido. Shit. But yeah, I wonder, yeah, if Tosaka would probably... She'll probably murder somebody in cold blood. She continued to turn through the pages rhythmically. In the midst of the fluttering sound of thumbing through the volume, Ako suddenly stopped her fingers at a certain page.
見つけた
She smiled to herself. It was a simple formula she had tucked away somewhere in the recesses of her memory. A spell of simple destruction.
檻をね作ればいいのよ狩りをする時の常套手段じゃない獲物を逃げられないようにするのは
She placed a bookmark in a book, closed it, and got up to return to her room. Suddenly she felt someone watching her. Through the window, she saw in the night a girl staring back with a cold-hearted expression. Herself? The girl's face was hers. The expression undoubtedly her own. Oh shit, right here. Yeah, man, she's ready to kill. She began planning how to erase the witness. Though to say it was something as elaborate as a plan was overkill. It was just a job. She was going to make a cage and then lure her prey into it. There was no getting around it. Premeditated violence.
そろそろアリスは上がったかな?
She mumbled out loud, as if the bed would retain some warmth to her chilled heart. I like this OSC. This OSC is pretty good. About 20 minutes had passed since she gave Alice the privilege of using the hot water first. Alice tended to bathe quickly, finishing well under 10 minutes. Her roommate was the type that could not stand the spirit of the bath, treating it nothing more than necessity for looking after one's body. For Alice, the concept of staying at a hot spring inn sounded more like a chore than anything. Though, in this regard, Aoko had to agree.
よし、浴場はカラッと。あれ、今に電気ついてる?
It was unusual for Alice to sit in the drawing room after her bath. On nights when she had nothing to discuss, it was her style to return directly to her bedroom.
アリス、いるの?
Alice nodded. With no book in hand, it appeared that Alice had been waiting for Aoko.
そういうこと。私も信用ないな、ほんと。
Aoko scratched her head in exasperation. Was it that Alice was worried about her and had no faith in her? Her expression was so calm, Aoko could hardly figure that she was thinking.
方針なら決まったけど、聞く?
その顔を見れば聞かなくてもわかるわ。迷いがなくなったのはいいことだけど。悪い癖ね、青子。
It's about... Alice let out a small sigh. It was unusual for Aoko to make such a display of her disappointment.
ええ、騙し討ちは趣味じゃないから。殺すにしても正々堂々、正面から理由を言った後にする。それならすっぱり後腐れもないし。文句ある？
文句はないわ。そういうの、好きか嫌いかはこの際関係ないでしょうし。けど、
確実性はどうかってことでしょ？私、いまいち命中率悪いし。その辺の問題は場所選びでフォローしようかなと。私はアリスのようにはいかないから、物理的に逃げられない場所にしようと思うんだけど。何かアイディアない？
Alice nodded in thought. The finger that gently rested on her lips indicated that the question was to her liking.
鏡はどう？鏡の国なら永遠に閉じ込めていられるけど。
あんた、そういうところ常識ないわよね。
She frowned at Alice's bad taste. It was the kind of idea her roommate found it to be inspired, but Aoko knew that was out of the question. Aoko was looking for a natural bounded field she could prepare, not a realm bordering on true magic she couldn't create to begin with.
なら他を当たるのね。でも、ここを使うのだけはやめてちょうだい。
言われなくても分かってるって。けど、そうね。ミラーハウスはいいアイディアかも。
Aoko smirked and shifted her balance away from the wall she was resting on.
サンキュー、アリス。全体の流れは出来上がったわ。ほんと、こういうのってダメ元でも相談してみるものよね。
Now in a good mood, Aoko retreated from the drawing room. Alice tried and failed to visualize what kind of blueprint Aoko had drawn up in her mind, but whatever it was, it appeared to be a thorough kind of Aoko was good at. Aoko headed for the bathroom, humming to herself as she went. A year and a half sharing a living space had taught Alice something. When Aoko Aozaki was in a good mood, only deep trouble could follow.
青子一人に任せていいのかですって。
It was unclear how long the bird had been in the drawing room. Chirping at Alice, the robin-like bird pranced across the furniture as if it was its property.
そうね。彼女が一人でやると言ったのだから、任せるのが正しい信頼関係なんでしょうけど。
Cheers. Excuse me. Excuse. The girl in black raised her arm. The bird, chirping once again, alighted on her outstretched, affectionate finger.
嫌な話だけど、信頼と信用はまた違う話よね。
The bird puffed out its stout chest in agreement, and Alko was none the wiser to her roommate's rather unsettling comments. Oh, she's gonna kill somebody. How does she know who the perpetrator is, though? Is she gonna guess and talk to them, saying, "Hey, you saw me using magic the other night"? The following day was a typically overcast one. The day classes ended as they had started, uneventfully. Winter break was just around the corner, and with it, final exams. Although Misaki High prided itself on discipline, it was still a private school which promoted a culture of independence among its students. Industrious students had a place to explore that side of themselves under the guardianship of the student council president. More easygoing students could spend their time after school as they wished, as long as they were mindful of personal responsibility. The fact that the poster boy of independence was the student council vice president indicated just how vast the spectrum was. Tobimaru Tsukiji threw open the door to the satellite student council room and the rumored location for their secret meeting. Despite all appearances, he was student council vice president, who also happened to be the poor soul responsible for executing student council's dirty work. The one person was waiting for him in the cramped room. The student council president, Aoko Aozaki, sat imperiously in a folding chair, glaring at Tobimaru and his boisterous entrance. So as not to succumb to Aoko's oppressive silence, Tobimaru opened with some casual small talk.
お疲れ様。ところであんた、何しに来たのか分かってる？
まあな。ただ、事務的に話すのって寒いじゃねえか。少しぐらい世間話でもしねえとつまらねえだろ。
Tobimaru closed the door and sat down across from Aoko. He was holding a blue envelope.
こういう時は無駄口は叩かない方がいいわよ。なんとなくプロっぽいでしょ。
なる。いや。
Tobimaru was halfway to agreeing with Aoko before he caught himself and began to shake his head. As much as Tobimaru enjoyed the lack of red tape in his new line of work, he was not ready to turn full spy on his first day on the job.
それで、調べ終わったの？
ああ、ついさっき最後の聴取を済ませてきた。詳しいことはその封筒に入ってる。お前から渡された例のファイルもそんなか。
Is that her reflection again? Nice shove. He tossed the envelope into the table.
そう。
Aoko picked it up and began to scan through the documents that were inside. She entered her own little world, not sparing the slightest bit of attention for Tobimaru. If ignoring other people were a skill, she would be a master at that.
なあ。
何？
一つ聞きたいんだけどよ。
だから。
The room was filled with a chilling silence. I think Aoko is like not trying to make. Well, she doesn't want to talk to him in the first place, but she also, if she talked to him too much, she might slip out. Yeah, I'm trying to kill somebody. Aoko continued reading without an ounce of emotion upon her face. Though Tobimaru kept up in an air of indifference. His stare remained fixed intently on her.
青崎、そういうの作って楽しい？
Stalker.
楽しいわけないでしょ。こんなの作ったところであんまり使う機会なんてないんだから。
そうか。ならいい。
Okay. Whether or not he was convinced, Tobimaru stood up from his chair with a disappointed expression.
最後まで読めばわかるだろうが、あんまり確証は取れなかったぜ。というより、おとといあの辺りにいた生徒はいないって話になりそうだ。まあ断定はできないけどな。
No longer concerned over his task, Tobimaru headed toward the door, as if to say it was out of his hands.
そうだ。そういえば、一人だけ該当しなかったやつがいる。季節外れの転入生までは、青崎も調べきれなかったみてえじゃねえか。
Ako raised her head ever so slightly. He was right. The recent transfer student was not included within the scope of her investigation.
そんなわけで、その字に関しては調べてないぜ。まあ、あいつならいつだろうと遅くまでバイトだろうが。いや、人殺しを見たなんてこと口走ってるようじゃ、家で悪い夢でも見てたのかもしれねえか。
Oh, fuck. Oh, you just snitch on him. Oh, fuck. Tobimaru cheerfully left the student counselor room. He just snitched on Soji, though. That asshole. Simultaneously, Aoko felt her fingers go numb, and the document she was holding spilled all over the table.
そんな、まさかね。
She broke out into a cold sweat and tried to tell herself that there must be some kind of mistake. However, the uncomfortable feeling in her gut would simply not go away. Perhaps because her intuition was almost always right at times like these.
バカらしい。
And yet, she knew what she had to do. She would not have hesitated to kill Tobimaru if he had been the witness. But what if it was who she was thinking of? Just considering the possibility caused her blood to run cold. Aoko put her forehead in her hands and began to brood. And then, suddenly, let us talk choice. You will always be faced with choices. A virtuous fool and a wicked sage. You cannot say both. You must pick one. That is the freedom granted to you. 2 years earlier, Ako muttered the words offered by her grandfather the day she replaced her elder sister as his successor and let out a sigh of lament.
僕、バカみたい。
She laughed at her own intuition, but it was no joke. If only those words had never been said. Ako locked up the student council room and left for the day. Calmly, as though nothing untoward had happened, she greeted the student as they passed her in the halls. She was almost shocked by how natural she seemed. There were still plenty of students at the school. The grounds were noisy with the chattering of students who had finished the day but had yet to get home. Others still had club activities. The gray sky looked ready to pour, but nobody seemed to pay any mind. Amidst the clamor, Aoko hastened to the school gate. She passed some students in animated conversation. They seemed to be talking about their after-school plans. Apparently, they're adamant about maximizing their free time. She could not figure how they could possibly be so irresponsible, focused on fun, but at the same time was in no mood to make fun of or feel envious of them. 2 short years prior, she had been just like them.
目は覚めてるのかな、私って。
She retied her scarf, this time more tightly, to give off an air of solitude. But she was not fooling no one. After all, what people who feign solitude are really masking in rejection.
そうよね。孤独っていうのはああいうのを言うもんでしょうし。
The area by the school gate was busier than usual. A group of boys appeared to be huddled behind it. Their transparent intent to discreet in terms of both location and loudness of voices did nothing to hide the fact that they were noisily arguing about a girl standing alone on the other side of the street. Oh, it's Alice. The girl was cloaked in black cape. At first glance, it could be mistaken for normal attire, but those from Misaki could tell she wore the uniform of a prestigious girls' school. Said school had no connection to Misaki High in any way, shape, or form. The two schools were miles apart, both physically and spiritually. A member of that school student body was a rare sighting, as the majority were forced to live in the school dorm. Rayan Girls Academy had a reputation as a school for princesses, and it was rare indeed for one to be slumming with the common folk. That alone would have been enough to cause a ruckus among the boys, but this girl looked the epitome of class. One could not help but describe the standing figure as charming. The way she silently, motionlessly waited her reminiscence of a meticulously composed portrait. Ako took one look at her before instantly recalling that one word, solitude.
まったくうちの男子どもは家に帰りもせず陰でこそこそやってるのはそういうこと。
Disgusted, Ako barged to the gate. At this point, she would normally head home, but today she crossed the street toward the waiting girl.
あれなるは生徒会長様？くそ、おっぱらう気なのかよ。痛いんならいつまでだっていさせてあげればいいじゃんか。てか怒られる？怒られるのあの天使。
天使？
よその生徒でも前にいるぐらいなら別に問題はないと思うけど。青子女子は容赦ねえからな。下手すると平手だぜ。
The boys ran their mouths behind her back. Not in the mood to shut them up, Aka riked right up to the girl and offered an informal wave.
どうしたのアリス？こんなところに来たって何も面白いことはないって言ったのに。
ありえねえ！
Aka heard the boys by the gate lose their collective minds and did her best to ignore them.
あのことを確かめに。青子、あの人たち邪魔なんだけど。
分かってる。今追っ払うから。
In contrast to Alice's small voice, Aka spoke loud and clear. Naturally, this was on purpose, so as to deal with the riffraff by the gate all at once.
会長こっち来んぞ。おい押すなよ。後ろのやつどけって。俺校舎に逃げるから。いやでもあの子会長と知り合いなんでしょ。うまく会長に紹介してもらうとか。さすが一年坊主。まだ戦場の現実ってもんを理解していねえ。よし、死の間際までいい夢見ろよ。
Perhaps because too many of them had gathered in one place, the mob entered a frenzied panic as they tried to escape. Ako addressed them all.
さーて、部活動があるわけでもなし、ただ家に帰るだけの帰宅部の皆さん、こんなところで何を集まってるのか教えてくれる？
The student council president stared daggered at the boys.
何しろ試験前だもの。身になることなら私も教えてほしいけど、まさかガン首並べて女学院のお嬢様を眺めてただけなんてことはないわよね。声をかける勇気もなくて眺めてただけなんてことは。
Not one of them was brave enough to admit that this was hit on the nail on the head. If any of them had such courage, they had already been chatting the young lady up. I like this. This CG is good too. Ah.
いや、僕教室にちょっと忘れ物が。こんなオチならダメ元で玉砕しとくんだった。天文部に行って双眼鏡借りるのどうだ？屋上からお顔を賜るとか。
They were binoculars.
天文部にそんなのねえよ。あるとしたら野鳥同好会じゃね？
Why a bird society?
それ先月会長が潰したじゃん。鳥めでてる暇があるなら彼女作れって。
ああ、彼女作れですか。すみませんっす。今日は裏口から帰るっす。 崎さん。くそ、じゃあな会長、また明日。
And with those oh so charming remarks, the boys scattered with their tails between their legs.
楽しそうね、青子。
わかる？
She's so stupid. I don't know. They gotta keep these facial expressions in the anime. They have to. Aku's response slipped out all too easily. In truth, there were not many bad apples in Misaki High, and dealing with them wasn't really that bad. That's one thing the Fate Stay Night, at least Unlimited Blade Works and Heaven Fields anime was kind of lacking. It didn't really have any good facial expressions like they did in the visual novel. They didn't animate the Fate route, but one of my favorite facial expressions from Sabers, but she got like those angry teeth. She's angry, so she's like I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. She got the shark teeth. And I like that one from Ilya too. That one's pretty good. And I like the Taiga Dojo of Tosuka and her little chibi. It's like really roughly drawn chibi of Tosuka, but it's like really funny and charming. It's pretty funny. Man, affordable, please. Come on, man. We don't want realism. We want anime. Keep the facial expressions.
で、ここまで出向くってことは何か分かったの？
結界に残っていた気配の識別は、あとはここで確かめればいいだけよ。
そう。ん？アリス、いつからここに？
下校時刻から。
So she had been here for roughly an hour. Standing in the same place for an hour would be taxing for someone as sensitive to the code as Alice.
悪いわね、無理させて。
別に好きでやってることだから。
What a nice roommate. As she spoke, her black eyes were fixed upon the gate and the students passing through it. She had likely been observing the gate in this manner for the past hour.
私を待ってたわけじゃないんでしょ？今からでも付き合うわ。
Alice nodded in assent. If Alice was still here, it meant she had not found the witness yet. If she had found a student, Alice would have already gone home ahead of Akko and begun to research the student background.
私の方はダメだった。
Oh! Oh, she lied! She reported the result of Tobimoto investigation. Alice remained silent. With that, the conversation ended, leaving the two to silently endure the freezing wind. The silent stakeout dragged on endlessly. The students continued to pass the gate, each shocked at the sight of the unusual combo, and head home. After 20 minutes, Aoko let out a sigh escape her mouth, perhaps from boredom, perhaps from the code, or perhaps from both.
ねえ、アリス。帰り黎明に寄ってかない？
Aoko quickly turned to Alice to catch her reaction. Dawn was the name of one of Ako's favorite coffee shops. Offering no clear indication as to whether she was critical of Ako's blasé attitude or agreeing to her whims, Alice's gaze shifted ever so slightly. Aoko followed her stare. Oh, it's him. The sudden voice took her off guard. There was only one person who spoke with this gentle, good-natured tone. Oh, Alice knows!
やっぱそうなるわけか。
Damn. Turning her back to Alice, Ako moved her focus to a newly appeared student.
それで、今日は何の用？
How does Alice know? Is it her familiars or whatever? All politeness flew out the window. Already in a bad mood, Ako's mood plummeted the longer she looked at Sojiro. The subtlety of her expression, however, was lost on him.
いや、これから駅前で水泳部の部長と待ち合わせなんだけど、そのことでお礼を言っておきたくて。
Well, that was completely unexpected. Thanks, joining a club? Ako had a hunch that he was about to say something brainless.
ふーん。お礼って、お礼参りってこと？
Fortunately, Sojiro was completely unaware of the more sinister implication to the word payback.
よくわからないけど、そんな大したことじゃないよ。ただ、水泳部は夏までそう忙しくないって話だったから。
Sojiro was just about to thank her for recommending a club that would not take up much of his time when Ako cut him off with an expression of disinterest.
当然でしょ。幽霊部員になりそうな生徒なんて紹介できないから。忙しいあなたでも務まりそうな場所があったから口に出しただけよ。
なるほど、無駄がないね。
His open admiration for sapped Alco's will to fight. Finding a suitable club and negotiating with his captain hadn't been an efficient use of her time at all.
とにかくお世話になったから、それで礼を言っときたくて。
Sojiro gratefully dipped his head, but not before the flustered Alco stopped him.
よしてよ。今あなたにそんなことされても迷惑だから。
Does Alice know it's him?
水泳部はどう？
I don't
やっ
know.
ていけそう？
She's just watching. An awkwardness infiltrated her previous sharp gaze. Sojiro was able to pick up on the odd change of her behavior, but could not divine its reason. So he simply stared with what he knew so far and reported the most recent information he had.
ああ、水泳部はクビになった。
なんでよ！
I kind of like that face too. I like it. Takuichi's good. It's like, it's good, but it's still very, I guess, cartoonish, anime-ish. I don't know what's the word. I like it. Alco instinctively shouted at the unexpected response, like a human jack-in-the-box. This unexpected development threw her mind into tizzy, and she momentarily forgot the complicated feelings she had been wrestling with.
だって今から待ち合わせだって。
それは、これからヤシロギの温水プールに連れて行ってくれるからだよ。
Onsen pool. Sojiro stated this very matter-of-factly to the still reeling Alco.
話がつながらない。そこまでうまくいってるのに、どうして入部を拒否されるのよ、あんたは。
そりゃ、俺が泳げないからだろ。
Damn. Excuse me. Alco reached up with her fingers and pinched the bridge off her nose as she processed his answer.
しずきくん、昨日の私の質問は覚えてる？走るのか泳ぐのか、どっちがいいかってやつ。私の記憶は正しいけど、一応確認しておくわね。あなた、確かに泳ぐ方だって言ったけど。
ああ、昔から泳げないのは何とか克服したかったんだ。反対に走る方は得意だけど。
Her energy spent, Alco finally understood.
俺が1年なら1から鍛えてくれたらしいんだけど、あと3ヶ月で3年になる身分なのに、金槌の部員は雇えないそうだ。けど部長が親身になってくれて、これから泳ぎを教えてくれることになったんだよ。
Sojiro words spoken from a place of joy, a fact that failed to reach Alco.
はあ、つまり、欠陥品を売りつけたってわけか。こりゃ水泳部の部長に合わす顔がないっと。ちょっと待った。しずきくん、水泳部の部長って。
She stopped herself short of a girl. She was afraid of how that might look. That she might not be able to rein herself in if she started.
もういいわ。気持ちは分かったから、どこか遠くにいてくれない？少し疲れてて、とてもじゃないけどあなたの相手はしていられないの。
飛び丸もそんなことを言ってたな。青崎は昨日と今日、珍しく疲れてるって。何かあったのか？
ちょっとね。でもいいの。解決したみたいだから。それより、しずきくんはどう見える？私、そんなに疲れて見えるのかな？
Why had she asked him this? Blurting out things for no reason and on impulse. That was not usual for Alco. Perhaps it was because she realized that this would be their last chance to have a normal conversation. After a few moments of contemplation, Sojiro conjured up a grin that cut straight through the intention.
そうだな。 疲れているというより生き生きしているように見える。仕方なく畑を耕していた狼が久しぶりに狩りに出ることになって機嫌を上げている感じだ。
On a hunt again. He seemed so cheerful, like he was so happy for her. Without thinking, Ako's hands went to her cheeks. If what he said were true, then she was grinning from ear to ear. There was just no way she would have made such a mistake.
とにかくありがとう。じゃあまた明日。
Perhaps still not comfortable enough to wave to her, he said his goodbye with sincerity in his voice and smile and took his leave.
待って。こんな話があるの。聞いてから言って。
Ako called out after him. Her voice was cold as she admonished herself for having been somewhat affable earlier.
意味のない例え話よ。そうね。あなたが空腹で死にそうな時、目の前に同じように空腹で死にそうな2匹の動物がいるとするわ。しずきくんに銃をあげる。それでどちらかの動物を撃って。右はライオンで、左は子猫。
What?
選ぶのはあなたの自由だから。
It was a fable-like moral dilemma. Shoot the lion or the cat? The kitten? If you're starving, I don't want both. Do I have to eat one of them? I don't know, man. It's kind of fucked up. Everyone would say the lion. But what if the lion's not gonna get, you know, what if it won't die in one shot? You're fucked. It's gonna kill you. Same thing with a cat, though. Cat's kind of vicious. I don't know. Especially the way in which it was cruel and rather preachy. The kind that if you thought too hard about, you would never find an answer. So you don't answer quickly and calmly.
いや、撃たないと思うよ。だって自分の好きにしていいんだろ。それにほら、空腹ならお互い様だ。
He was not in the least fazed by the dilemma. He gave the most innocent response. So innocent, in fact, that it would give anyone pause.
長生きするわ、あなた。
Damn, dude. I gave a coward response. I'm not gonna shoot both because they're gonna kill me. Alright, I guess it shows what kind of person I am.
すごいセリフだな。そんなことを言われたのは多分君が初めてだ。
Adorning his face with a smile, wholly out of sync with his comment.
何よそれ。
She regretted stopping him. If only she had just watched him go, this conversation would have never happened. Sojiro Suzuki made his way down the street. Today, just like every day, he probably had to work late again. Only Ako and Alice remained, with Alice doing what she could to simply blend in.
つくづくこっちのペースを乱してくれるわね。
Ako clenched her right fist tightly as she cursed out loud, anything to prevent herself from screaming at the top of her lungs. Whether that scream would be directed towards Sojiro or towards herself was another matter entirely.
青子。
Ako heard Alice's soft voice behind her. Ako knew that she was going to say, as she had known for the entire time. Ever since Alice, having shown no reaction to any other students, changed her expression upon seeing Sojiro.
言わなくてもいい。あいつでしょ、目撃者は。
Her voice was cold as ice. It was the voice of someone talking about a complete stranger. The lion and the kitten. There were pros and cons to choose either of these animals. The point being that she had asked him to choose one of them. In terms of risk, the lion was the most dangerous choice. The instant the boing, the gun was pointing at it, there was a chance it could fight back. See, I told you, I knew it. It's because that lion's tough as fuck, man. There's no way to go down in a gunshot, one gunshot. It gotta be multiple. It gotta be fast too. Those who chose the lion required more courage, but any sense of guilt that came with holding a gun would be forgotten. Lions were fierce creatures, a poor excuse to shoot an animal, perhaps, but one that certainly helped alleviate the guilt. But what about the kitten, the weaker creature? It goes up saying the kitten would be the easier target of the two, but choosing it would be a disgusting decision for anyone. Even if the kitten had no chance to survive, it was too senseless to carry out. I don't know about that, man. The weaker target? Have you seen how fast kitten reflexes are? I've seen a cat fight off a snake. That shit is fast. And to Ako, Sojiro was that choice.
てっきり私もそうだと思ってた。
When she had felt the sinking feeling in the student council room, she ignored it. There was no getting around what must be done, she told herself. Until, that is, Sojiro went and said what he said, causing her resolve to waver. But the discomfort in her chest did not stem from any guilt she may have felt. She could care less for Sojiro. He was weak, and would be incredibly easy to deal with. Yet for some reason, she could not dispel her reservations. A transfer student who moved to the city from the middle of nowhere, with no family to speak of. Few would notice if he were to suddenly disappear compared to a person of some renown. If she were to kill him, it would be as simple as wringing a cat's neck. And it all served to just piss her off. It was too lucky. Like everything was neatly handed to her. She wanted to just drop kick it right into orbit.
信じられない。私嫌がってる。これは違う。こんなの私じゃない。
Standing behind her, Alice heard all of the muttering. Nonetheless, she seemed ignored and said,
彼、首に布を巻いていたわね。
a wholly unrelated topic. Ako returned to her senses.
ええ、水泳部の首とかけていたのかしら。
What? Alice had put much thought into this, as if it had a deeper meaning to her somehow.
そういえば、あいつ初めて会った時も首に布巻いてたっけ？襟を行儀よく締めてるから目立たないけど。
The conversation turned to idle nonsense. And though it solved none of the current problems, it did help calm Alco's friend-zoned nerves.
サンキュー。落ち着いたわ、アリス。それと、気合も入った。善は急げ。あいつが言いふらす前に決着をつけよう。
Pumped once more, Alco turned her back to the school gate. For now, they retired to the mansion and prepared for battle. I like this song a lot. They use this song a lot in anime. It's a really good song, though.
いつ、どこで彼を殺すの？
I mainly recognize it from that visual novel, You, Me, and Her. I think that one was, I think it was really good when they used it there. She said quietly so as not to be overheard by anyone else. Normally Ako had to rein in that side of Alice, out in the open as they were, but this was far from a normal situation.
今日の夜、場所はとっておきの夢の国よ。
She gave a fearless laugh, a strangely pleasant sound. Excuse me, like the kind one would make when meeting their lover. No? What time is it? Do I continue? Oh, fuck, it is midnight. Oh, I didn't stream that much, though. Only an hour and 30 minutes. Yeah, I guess we could save it. Slow and steadies wins the race. So, yeah, I got back into reading Witch on the Holy Night. It's a little bit tough because of work. And because I talk a lot and work, my voice is really tired. This game has a lot of reading. So it isn't, and because of my position, right? I'm in a higher position now, so I talk more. And because of that, with a lot of stuff going on, it's harder for me to do reading streams. Technically, I guess, yeah, reading streams out loud without my voice dying. This is on a weekend, but I did work overtime today. like 4 hours on a Sunday out of nowhere. So my voice is pretty tired. But yeah, I want to try to continue playing more Witch on the Holy Night, especially with the movie, because the movie's going to take forever for the English translation. It's going to come out for Japan, and it's going to take like 6 months or a year for English. So, we shall see. Will Uncle kill Sojiro? Probably not, but we already know, I guess. Yeah, we'll play more next time. GG's for now. GG's.